I'd like to introduce our speakers now, and we're very pleased to have both Sandi Howell and Megan Schwabiuk here to present today. Many of you will know Sandi from presentations in past years and the work that she's done in Manitoba, but I'm going to just share a little bit of her bio with you, because sometimes we don't always know the background of the people that are presenting. So Sandi has a BA and a Master's in Education, majoring in curriculum. She's director of the Sector Council's Essential Skills and Recognition of Prior Learning in the Labour Market Skills Division, Manitoba Entrepreneurship, Training and Trade. Over the last 26 years, Sandi has been responsible for groundbreaking and award-winning workplace training and training systems, especially noted in the fields of English as another language, workplace literacy, and essential skills. In Sandi's current position, she develops and implements targeted responses directed at the underrepresented groups, occupational and sector-specific needs, and apprenticeship essential skills upgrading. Prior to her current position, back in 2001 and earlier, Sandi worked for Canada's Department of National Defence in the development of web-based, paper-based, and multimedia training materials, serving as a project manager, an instructional designer, and editor. Sandi, as we all know, continues to consult across Canada on training-related system responses, and, as some of us may not know, is currently partway through a fine arts degree. So welcome, Sandi, and thank you very much for joining us today. I'd also like to give you a brief introduction to Megan Schwabiuk. Megan works with Workplace Education Manitoba with Sandi. She's the project coordinator, implementing projects in workplace, essential skills, and workplace PLAR. She's been involved in adult learning for over 10 years with industry, academia, and the workplace. And she also likes to cook and eat. So welcome, Megan, and thank you for joining us this morning. Sandi, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for inviting me, and some I know and have known for a long time, and some I don't know, so thank you for coming today. Okay, so am I going like this? There's no... All right. Yes, and this is indeed where I am from, the Labour Market Skills Division of Entrepreneurship, Training and Trade. So I believe the purpose in inviting me today was for a bit of an update on, what the division as a whole really is doing with essential skills and recognition of prior learning. In order to do that, I need to tell you a little bit about Labour Market Skills Division right now. I won't take too much time with that. Partway through the presentation, because of the logical flow of the presentation, I'm going to turn it over to Megan, and she will talk very specifically about some of the projects she's doing, because she's doing some very interesting work related to recognition of prior learning with businesses. And then when Megan is finished, I will take over again and talk about some of our work in the North, which has a particularly interesting blend of recognition of prior learning and also essential skills. So we are currently reorganizing in a very, very substantial and major way within government. And you will see this in provincial governments across the country, but you will also see this with the federal government, and that will be kicked off with their budget announcement in a few short weeks. So get used to massive government change. But in the Labour Market Skills Division, we are also changing and reorganizing. It is based on a continuum of service, and I'll show you some graphics of that in the next few slides. But one of the foundations of the service that the Labour Market Skills Division will provide is essential skills. In other words, decision-making around funding individuals, as well as decision-making around supports to industry and companies, will reside on one of the key questions of, do those participating have essential skills level sufficient enough to be successful at whatever we are about to fund them to do. That will be a fundamental question required across the division and all its branches. Okay? The second key piece that you need to understand related to the recognition of prior learning is that it is indeed embedded within all of our activities. So I have said this a number of times publicly in the last 10 years. When I arrived 10 years ago, if you will, they were just really launching PLAR at the time across government and its various outreach activities. It had been going on, obviously, for a substantial amount of time at places like Red River College, etc. But as you know, in terms of government policy and government think, it was in 2001 that they launched their policy framework. So there was a lot of deliberateness in the first 3 to 5 years. You have to be very deliberate. You have to constantly message about it. You have to fund additional strategic projects to develop something and to put it in place. You have to take the success of those and the lessons learned and recycle it through the system. And you have to keep doing that in order for there to be significant cultural change. In other words, change around the way that we do things and the way that we think around doing things. So at the time, awareness raising and marketing is a big thing at the time. So you heard a lot about it back then. You heard tons about it, and there was all kinds of symposia and working committees and documentation and pamphlets and all of this kind of thing. There is less so now in 2012. However, there is much more activity in 2012, and that's because this is the way we think now. It is not this strange bird standing off to the side, if you will, that we have to deliberately circle around and launch a special initiative. It is expected in terms of our daily and hourly business. So people automatically ask, silently perhaps, is there a place for people to be recognized? Is there a manner in which we could use portfolio for a number of different reasons? It's an automatic question throughout our system. It is an underpinning of our career framework. It is no longer a special or strategic project. So this is a good news thing. Other provinces will go, how did you do that? You know, it's an enviable thing to change culture to the level that people don't even know we're not supposed to do it anymore. They just do it, okay? So I'm very pleased, and also very pleased with the ongoing support of the RPL and PLAR community, both in Manitoba but across Canada, because that has been of assistance in achieving this. Part of what you need to understand in the delivery of service, particularly to clients, as distinguished from existing workers or employees, is you need a conceptual model around who should they be or what should they have. Okay? It cannot be left up to, in big systems like this with millions of dollars, it can't be left up to just, well, I think it should be this. You know, yeah, personally, I think it should be this, thus I shall fund my clients in this way. I mean, I think intuitively you understand that when I say it. But to make it obvious is, over the years, the idea of what somebody should be changes. It changes in the face of government policy. It changes in the face of what funding will allow, and it changes in relationship to our fundamental question of what does it mean to be ready? This is what we do in Labour Market Skills Division. We ensure that people are ready, not for our purpose, for someone else's purpose, all the time. And so, what does it mean to be ready? And these things change over the years. I mean, to be reductionist about it, if you go back to the 50s, being ready, either for continued training and education or for a workplace, was a very, very different thing than being ready in the year 2012. So concepts around that and individuals are constantly evolving. One of the issues is huge systems like governments don't evolve that quickly. So you see the massive change that is either obvious or will be obvious or might remain not so obvious to people right now in governments across the country, as well as the federal government, is a reflection of exactly this. Who do we have to be in 2012 to support people to be ready? And ultimately, the driver for that is ensuring that the country is economically viable. That's the policy driver, if you will. How can we remain at the standard of living that we are in Canada and also in Manitoba? Okay, all of these things push back in terms of why does government want this or like this or support this or ask these questions? Okay, it's all very important. So for individuals, conceptual model at a very high level that we are defining right now in terms of the pre-employment side of the house, and to some extent the existing worker side of the house, is this bundling here, very simply. Essential skills, employability skills, technical and or professional skills, and career self-management skills. Okay, so we look at individuals and assess readiness across these domains. And thus our policies around funding, or where we feel people should go, or how they should get what they get, reside on these domains at the moment. Here is the Labour Market Skills Division. And just to define that further, it is Employment Manitoba, deals largely with individual clients. Industry Workforce Development deals with employers. And Apprenticeship Manitoba deals with apprentices and trades qualifiers. These are the individual branches that constitute the Labour Market Skills Division. But what you are going to hear across the country, and indeed in Manitoba, is we hesitate to define ourselves by silos anymore. And I am here today representing the Labour Market Skills Division. And it will be the expectation going forward, and it is the expectation also going forward in other provinces, that we deliver an integrated service response. So if you're talking to me, you're actually speaking to all three, etc. This is the way governments are going to operate from now on, because the need is huge. The resources are the same or declining. That's the money bit. And we cannot afford anymore to be duplicating effort, to be duplicating expenditures. And thus, at any given moment, we will ask the question, are the right people at the table? Is it a priority? in terms of everything that I have just said leading up to now, our policy drivers, the economic well-being of Manitoba, how we define what individuals need to be ready. Does it fall within those ticky box priority lists? If yes, we will proceed. If no, we will not be there. Okay, so it's going to be quite a different day, if you will. This is the new service continuum for Labour Market Skills Division, and we will talk about this. Clusters of service responses across the continuum. The center dividing line simply shows that as a division we are responsible both for pre-employment as well as existing workers. Okay, both. So we deal with organizations as a whole. We deal with business organizations like sector councils, which represent the collective needs of many. We deal with individual businesses. We deal with individuals, and we deal with communities, which represent individuals. Okay? So we're just about everywhere across this continuum of service. Okay? Now, on to some of the specifics to update you. Essential skills. You know I harp on this one over the decades. It is still the 9. It is still, in my mind, defined by the HRSDC, who says it is about the tasks that are performed in the workplace. Okay? And again, I'm well known to publicly harp on the very simple concept that there is no such thing as generic essential skills. It is always about a task performed in the workplace. I will go as far as to say you can create transferability from generic programming to the essential skills side of the house. But you have to understand my worldview is that I have spent the last 26 years training people in the workplace to do very specific things. People with post-secondary degrees, people with graduate degrees, and people with none of those, people with high school certification or people with none of that. There is an underlying assumption or misunderstanding that it's all about people who lack literacy. No, it's not. It's about all of us. It's about lifelong learning and that concept. So we can be essential skills challenged simply in changing jobs. The biggest place that you will see an essential skills challenge across all sectors, all sizes of companies, all occupations, is when somebody who has been performing a largely technical or professional nature job is moved into a supervision or management category. Think about this for a moment. I know that all of you here are very familiar with occupations. Think about that for a moment. So you're going along really well, being regarded as the best at, which is why you're getting the promotion. You're not doing that anymore. Suddenly, you are required to deal with a level of writing in a fashion which you have not seen before. Typically, you're dealing with numbers and accountability and reporting in a fashion you have not dealt with before. You are dealing with people in a fashion you have not dealt with likely ever, particularly if you're coming from the technical side of the house. Thus, you are considered to be remarkably essential skills challenged. And the perspective of individuals in your organization, either under you or on top of you, will be that you are the least skilled person in this building at this moment. And I have surveys that can show you that evidence. That's the perspective on these people. It is an essential skills issue. Very simply, it's an essential skills issue. So that's an example about essential skills for all of us. I would like you to notice, please, one thought that these came down on tablets and carved in stone. Not so. Please notice computer use has changed to digital technology, reflecting what is required in 2012. Everything evolves. In particular, Workplace Education Manitoba at the moment is focusing a great deal of effort, well, they continue to focus a great deal of effort on all 9, but in particular right now we're doing a lot of development work around these 2. Digital technology and continuous learning. These are big. They can indeed be. Very nice point. I don't know whether you heard Barb, but she said they're synonymous. They are definitely connected. To be, to have a high demand on your digital technology skills, you must be a crackerjack continuous learner. Absolutely. Which is a lovely segue into what I would like to say, thank you, Barb, about digital technology. Okay? It is not simply computer use, as we used to define it. There is an underpinning for the ability to be proficient in digital technology, and this is where you must look to the other 9 essential skills. Very simply, if you can't read, if you cannot extract information from or put information into a document, if you cannot use numeric systems, you will not be proficient in digital technology. Not to mention all of the thinking skills, job task planning and organizing, decision making, and problem solving. If you lack those essential skills, you cannot be proficient in digital technology. Same thing, back to a simple concept. If you can't read, you cannot do math. You can do it in your head, but you can't read things that are given to you on a piece of paper. Problem solving, etc. If you can't read, you can't do math. Reading is always the foundation of everything. Okay? So, digital technology, and it's computers in the workplace. Computers in the workplace are not just personal computers. Okay? They are the thing that's attached to the laser cutter. They are CNC machines. They all have computers in them or digital technology. So every time a new piece of equipment is introduced into a workplace, the question is, do they have the digital technology skills to be able to use this equipment? In the workplaces where they have not had digital technology before, you may have to be asking the question, can they read? So for 40 years, they've been hammering it out with hand tools and cutting things, and all of a sudden, oh, we're getting a laser cutter, and everyone's going, how do we use this thing? So it's not just about the ability to use a machine. Suddenly, you've been hand doing things according to verbal instructions that people are giving you, and you've been doing well. In comes this new piece of equipment with a requirement for you to read computerized instructions and to input stuff in, and you've been here for 25 or 30 years and doing well, but no one knows you can't read, and no one asks the question. This is a complicated thing, okay? But essential skills again. Now the next one here is continuous learning. What about that? Seems like a no-brainer, right? Of course. Not necessarily. We have found over the years that people's ability to transfer learning to a novel situation is very poor. You will find this everywhere. It becomes highly noticeable in the workplace, may not be so noticeable in sort of an academic setting. But when we get people to try to transfer the knowledge gained in an academic setting to a novel thing in front of them, this is where the continuous learning skills show up or don't show up. In addition to that, continuous learning and change. Change. I would argue, from my perspective, that since the early 90s, change as a way of life is escalating daily in the workplace. Right now, it's off the Richter scale. It's unbelievable. It's so fast-paced. And that could be just my government world, because change occurs hourly in government. Trust me, by the time I get back to my office, no word of a lie, there'll be 5 alarm fires because of change. And the reason I was a little late this morning, because I was dealing with a change that happened overnight, so I could come here. So it's remarkable. Change fatigue is the phrase of the week. Do you think there's too much change fatigue to tell them we're now reorganizing again? Oh yeah, I'm thinking that might be true. Change is about continuous learning. It's about thinking skills. It's about the ability to apply prior knowledge, prior experience, prior scenarios into a novel situation. As a culture, we lack this concept. When we go to high schools, I say to them, 2 things you can do that would help me. My actual objective in my job is to work myself out of a job. So if I'm doing my job correctly, which apparently I'm not, I will have to be, there will be no more essential skills needs. People will have everything that they need. They will be excellent continuous learners. They won't need me. They'll say, we can do this. We don't need you. People will just be doing this automatically. And so we say to high school teachers in particular, because the whole idea of essential skills is enormously overwhelming to them. They don't know anything about the workplace. How are we going to convey this even? How are we going to teach this? Okay? 2 things. Teach people document use and teach them the concept of transfer, or to be good continuous learners. If you could do anything in institutional education, and it's not a criticism, it's an observation, if you could do those 2 things, I would be much more towards my personal goal of not having a job. So, those things are lacking in the population as a whole, and they're quite easy to start embedding. For those of you who have children, leave here and start embedding that. And if you don't know what to do, we always say to people, just stop and think how you do it and model it. It's as simple as that, model it. Okay? Just as a word of explanation about document use, because I threw it out there, I put it out there. For document use is written text combined with graphics. Okay? So what are we talking about? We're talking about charts and graphs and tables and all manner of things like that, combined with text. And we have found over the years it is jaw-dropping, astonishing how many people cannot read a simple table. Across, down. Astonishing. Now, how long does it take to tell someone that or to coax it out of somebody nearby? Not that long. Trust me. Across the country, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people do not know that. These are people with grade 12 certification. They don't know how to use a table of contents or an index in a book. They don't know these things. And so the way that we get involved is regulatory certification exams in a workplace, open book tests. They're failing. Are they fine on the floor? Absolutely. They're proficient on the floor in terms of manufacturing process. They're failing the test. Why are they failing the test? They can't use the book. They don't know how to use the book. Show them how to use the book. The remediation is 2 to 4 hours. They pass the test. It's a document use issue. We see this again and again and again and again and again. Okay? All right. Recognition of prior learning. Right now across the division, we like the word recognition. I hear my own assistant deputy minister saying, we making sure they're recognized for that? Yes, this is what we want. So it drives all kinds of responses. Okay, it drives partnerships to ensure that people that we fund and businesses that we fund for whatever are able to be recognized for whatever they're doing. Recognized in terms of credentials or linking to formal education, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? So the word recognition is big right now. Big, big, big. Okay? So those are the large R recognition pieces. The small R recognition pieces are very simply, if we have pre-employment people, does an employer recognize them? You know, there's been this theory for a very long time that, you know, because we run a pre-employment plumbing piece, employers will say, well, we want them. No. You know, but we're well beyond the day where we wouldn't now ensure that employers are at the table to help craft what is being taught in the pre-employment piece, industry defined, and that the proper documentation for them coming out of the pre-employment piece is there, and employers go, I recognize this, you are hired, small r, okay? It's incumbent upon all of us to be very cognizant about this at the moment. Portfolio. In our pre-employment pieces, we're very big on confidence building. Okay, we're throughout Manitoba. Spend a lot of time in the north. Portfolio is our main mechanism for building confidence. Okay, and we have decided, back to who should an individual be? For us to get anywhere at all, at the very least in terms of engagement, they must begin to have some confidence. And we use this as a major tool in getting them started on that road. And now this would be where Megan comes up.
Yes, so I might be challenged staying at the podium as well because I like to wander, but I'll do my best and try to stay. Thank you, Sandi, for inviting me today to talk a little bit about some of the projects that I've been working on at Workplace Education Manitoba. Now, Workplace Education Manitoba we're throughout Manitoba, and we do a lot of work rooted in the areas of essential skills, RPL, and WPLAR. But for my area, I'm focused in partnering with the businesses in Winnipeg. And all of the projects that we worked on are basically stemming from a business need or an employer need. And I've been with Workplace Education Manitoba for almost, for a year and a half now. And I had come from the workplace where, it was a different angle, workplace training. It was actually highly regulated. We need to show that people know this so that when we have regulatory or the FDA come in, we can prove, yes, people know this. They know how to run the machine. They can plug that data in correctly, and they can manufacture your drugs to specification. So, when I think about RPL, I think about, oh man, we were doing that there, and we kind of didn't even know it. It was already embedded. And now I've continued on with some of that knowledge and philosophy and applying it in projects that I'm working on here at WEM. And it's almost, it's no fail whenever you go into an organization and you begin rolling with initiative that's either small or targeted, or a huge initiative that's holistic. You always see benefits and positive outcomes in the learners, whether it be them able to plug away at a machine where they couldn't before, or whether it's them having the confidence to continue on learning. We always see these kind of outputs or outcomes coming out of our projects, and I'm glad to be able to share with you today a few of the projects I'm working on. Just a little bit about Workplace Education Manitoba. We've been around for 20 years, so 20 years experience implementing essential skills programs throughout Manitoba. We work with both large organizations and small medium enterprises. So currently I'm working with a workplace that has 36 employees, and we're in there helping them build some essential skills training foundations, and basically the start of a workplace training program, because they recognize the value of continuous learning and workplace learning. We offer both holistic and targeted solutions. The continuum is amazing. Sometimes WEM's called in on a specific initiative. So, for example, we had a business call us and say, we just really like people to be able to use our blueprints and to find information in the blueprints. Okay. So we came in, we used their blueprints, we designed a customized solution, we delivered it. And the outcomes were, it was great. Folks were, at number one, they loved coming to the training because they didn't get to do that much training. And they've actually asked to receive more training. The workplace was happy because now they were less dependent on the supervisors. So the employees were taking the initiative and were able to find information without having to go back and forth and ask. As well, it kind of took off anytime they introduced a new blueprint, from the organization's perspective, they were able to the employees kind of took it and rolled with it. There wasn't any front-end training time required. So both the learners and the organization was really happy. And holistic, I'll talk about some of the holistic projects that we're working on. We also offer needs assessment services. So sometimes we'll go into a business and we'll assess their needs, and we might say, this isn't an essential skills issue or a training issue. You just need to fix your documents. And sometimes we help design a solution around redoing the documents and helping them work through that. And any type of project that we move forward with is customized to that workplace. So those specific tasks at that workplace, that's what we focus on, and that's what we build on to say, okay, well, you need this kind of training, or you need this type of initiative here. And it's workplace tasks, and it's also we take a look at workplace culture. Is this a culture of continuous learning? Have they adopted this? Are they used to learning? And that kind of plays into what kind of solution we design for that workplace. And I love this. I know Sandi touched on the essential skills, and I have to apologize because I have to update my computer use to read digital technology. But I love this depiction of basically, the learning spectrum. And if you look, I can't tell you how many times I've gone into an organization And they have the competency and the training down pat. We have this great blueprint reading course. It's it's 8 hours long, and folks come in, and then we ask, well, how do they, are they using the blueprints on the floor? Well, that's why we called you in. We're not sure why, they can't read them or they can't transfer it. And a lot of times it boils down to, well, there's some essential skills. There's before anyone can be able to go through your 8-hour blueprint reading course, do they know how to navigate? Do they know how to use the tables in the blueprints? Do they know how to use the math in the blueprints? Can they read the text in the blueprints? So those are things that we kind of look like. And we also help to educate businesses around essential skills and to say, hey, you know what, this is here. These are things you need to consider when you're moving forward with your training. So the first project I wanted to talk about was a local company where we were called in, and basically there was a change in management, and they were looking for a way to engage their workforce. So the gentleman, he'd been there for I think a couple of months, and in addition to engaging their workforce, he had said, we haven't really done that much training. So they had some initial training pieces that had begun to be created, but when I asked them, well, what are you training on? What do these folks have to know? I kind of got a blind stare. So I said, well, do you have any standard operating procedures for the equipment? And he kind of smiled. And he said, well, that's kind of on our list. We'd like to create that as well. And I kind of said, okay, well, do you have any equipment manuals? And he says, well, no, actually all of our equipment was built here 70 years ago. Mm-hmm. So for 70 years, employees were just coming on and learning, it's that idea of tribal knowledge. Here's how you work the machine. And they were, running into now with all the lean initiatives, looking at quality, trying to improve your processes. It was challenging because he couldn't go down and see, well, how do you operate this machine without talking to 3 people who were doing it in 3 different ways. Mm-hmm. So they were also looking to revamp their workplace training materials. Like I mentioned, they had begun, but without knowing what folks need to do, how can you build training that's going to be efficient and effective? And they also were looking at a system to manage training. So, if what they really wanted to be able to do is cross-train folks, and just along the lean journey, if you have a lot of stuff that has to come through a certain process, can we bring folks onto that process, and are they trained to be able to do that? So those were kind of their needs, and we kind of took that and thought about it, and I worked with the organization to develop a strategy by combining Essential Skills, RPL, and WPLAR. And basically, this is kind of an outline of what we did, and I'll break it down into pieces. But we looked at embedding essential skills in a recognition of prior learning process. And what we did was we worked with the employees, we worked with them to actually write their procedures. And in doing that, they were recognized for their learning. And that essentially helped us, once we had those procedures, which we have now, to begin along that journey of, okay, well, let's start looking at what kind of training you would need. So ultimately, we started at that organization with a broad spectrum. We brought everybody in to kind of introduce the idea of training and the program and what it could look like. Because this was an organization who, before they hadn't done much training and folks weren't used to the idea. So getting them down the continuous learning path and on that journey. We then started doing a process where we would bring folks in. They'd get one-on-one training in writing, one-on-one training in oral communication. And basically, they went through the process of writing their own standard works and their own procedures. And it was a continual process of that, plan, do, check, act, working with management, working with quality. How does this look? Is it correct? And as we went through this, you can imagine all the aha moments that some of these folks were having. wow, John's been doing it this way and I've been doing it this way. Well, let's merge your knowledge together and see what is the best way. And as we were doing that, they were building writing skills. So if you look at their writing from when they started writing out the procedures to now the way they've written them, we've seen amazing results and amazing progression in their writing skills. So where we're at now with this project is, we also did oral communications. So what we had them do was the folks who are writing had to go and talk to everyone who were doing the processes. So how do you do that? How do you gather information? What are some of the techniques and the skills you need? And it actually became, folks would come into these sessions with the writers, and they would work together to generate these procedures. So we had all this kind of mishmash of essential skills training happening, all while recognizing and recording the knowledge that was out there on the floor and adding some standardization to the processes. And the neat part of this is, before we move into that phase of, okay, now that we have all these competencies and these, all the knowledge of what you need to know to run the machine, at this organization they needed to validate it. And there was another change in management, and the new manager came in, and he said, I've kind of been working with these employees, and it's just been so easy for me. I'm the type of manager who loves to engage the employees in our processes. When I got there, he had the plant mapped out, and they were moving things around, and all the employees were coming in and giving him feedback around where they think the machine should go. And he said, that's been easy here, and I think it's because they've been going through this process, and they like sharing what they know. They like talking about what they could do or how they could learn more. So that was a really cool benefit. And the other thing he said was, what I'd really like to do is I'd like to hear from these folks. They've worked on these standard works. Can we organize like a lunch presentation where they come in and present what they've written and what they've done? Or, maybe we could do it on the floor. So these employees who originally, had all this knowledge and weren't able to attend training or to grow it, were now building their knowledge, showing that they know, and presenting it to senior management to validate the procedures. So as we continue now, we're looking at building, some formalized training around what we gathered in terms of the competencies and knowledge required for the processes, and we're also looking at ways that we can integrate that into their HR systems. So, around recruitment, how can this be in-house for folks who are already here, so that you can begin your cross-training. So just some of the outcomes, and this was, a lot of this is straight from management's mouth, was that, he said, Megan, I now have, 10 people here who can continue writing at this level and making these standard works. And I said, yeah, well, they built those skills and we can continue writing, and why don't we look at doing, job profiles? So what we're going to do is we're going to be working with some of these folks with an essential skills profiler to integrate and embed essential skills into those standard works and profiles. And, I think at this organization, one of the biggest accomplishments was the fact that these employees became engaged. And they through doing this process, they learned, we should be watching for quality. We should all be doing this the same way. It's so much more efficient when we are. I want to learn more. I want to be able to communicate more. One gentleman said, well, I think I'm ready to take my forklift training now. I wasn't ready before, but maybe I'll go and try and do that. So really, we've started them along that journey of continuous learning, and they're hoping to continue that. So we're looking at developing training, also developing a system to track assessments, and what can we do for your HR systems. So that was one project. Are there any questions or?
Who qualifies to get your services? Like how does an industry, or how do you connect with an industry that needs further this training?
Well, typically the industry finds us, and it's through, in this particular case, it was through word of mouth. So they've also been involved in a few other programs, and they heard about WEM, and I think we just, we came in, we had a chat, and ultimately, when I go into a workplace, I kind of see, is this a fit for WEM? Is it, WPRAL opportunity? Is it essential skill opportunity? What does the opportunity look like? And then we go through WEM's process of requesting money from our funders to be able to implement the program.
So the cost to the employer is really more the time involved in terms of giving the employees the time to participate in the whatever training or writing and so on is involved.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And for this organization, they were doing, I think, 1 or 2 hour sessions every twice a week. So, the commitment there was amazing, and they were, really happy with the outcomes, and they're hoping to continue more. So now they're asking, well, when can we start doing, more of the training? We want to keep this rolling. So it's really cool to work with an organization who's that committed.
Are you trying to, or are you being asked to do any ROI, return on investment, with the work that you're doing? It seems, bottom line dollars and people looking for, what it does for the company. Are you doing this as part of these projects, or are you able to?
In a roundabout way, yes. ROI, I start by working on ROE. So we talk about the expectations, and we kind of roll with that. And I find that with my eyes and ears open, I can, we can usually have that chat about ROI and bring it down to, sometimes down to numbers.
That's always the hard part, and often what employees are looking for rather than the qualitative, but it's really hard to be able to do.
Can I answer that? I don't know whether I should speak into the microphone. Kirkpatrick, the 4 levels of evaluation. A couple of years ago, they went to the concept of return on expectations, ROE. And there's some very good literature about that online, that what some of us have felt all along, and very good accountant will tell you, is you are not even remotely qualified to isolate those numbers. And so the ROI thing is a bit of a fiction. In addition to the fact that many of our employers, even some of the big ones and the good ones, don't actually have baseline data. So you're basically asking for a miracle, for us to report on an increase when there is no actual baseline data.
So you're not being asked for that by employers?
We are asked for it all the time,
Okay.
not by the employers,
Okay.
but rather by government people who don't understand, particularly the federal government. They're too far away from the actual practice to fully understand that they're asking for something which employers don't even necessarily do. So, but you can collect information, as Megan said, of a profound nature. And when you show that, when you talk about the return on expectation, this was the issue, this is what we did, and here are the quotes from the supervisors or the CEO, that actually satisfies people. So, they forget about this ROI thing. The other thing I'll very quickly say, and let Megan get on with it, is right now we're in the final year forthcoming of a 3 to 4 year project called Measures of Success. It's about workplace evaluation, and Manitoba and Nova Scotia are doing this with the Centre for Literacy in Quebec. We are measuring both productivity gains as well as social impact gains. So what an individual would perceive that they've gotten out of something going on in the workplace, and the impacts perhaps to their home, their family, their community, as well as what the employer perceives was the productivity gain from essential skills training. And so we're doing sort of 10 workplaces in each province, so there'll be a total of 20
in the study. And the measure was as they're going in 3 months, 6 months. So they're going back to everybody at those points. It's being done by a professional research company, so it's not sort of, okay, now essential skills instructor, you're now a data and accountability accountant. Yeah, as well as a reading expert. Yeah. No, these are real researcher, people that do this all the time. And what will be coming out the other side of it is a tool that we can use nationally to collect consistent data, which has been lacking in workplace essential skills and literacy practice. It doesn't exist.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll move on to another project that we're working on, and this project is a really cool project. Because truly we're beginning baseline in this organization to build a training program there, and we're doing it through starting with essential skills training. You know, and that may sound crazy, and I thought about, oh, what was the situation? And I had a bunch of bullets, and I just took out the bullets, and I said, well, they just had nothing in terms of training. So when you were put on the floor, it was sink or swim, just go. You need to figure it out. And I think even talking to some folks who worked there, the on-the-job training wasn't quite there either. So it was truly you were on your own. So again, this was an opportunity. New management came in, and we're starting baseline to get these folks on that continuous learning journey, and to begin implementing a workplace training program there, starting with essential skills. So we had a lot of work to do front end with introducing the program, and I use the term program loosely. It's basically we're coming in and we're going to start doing training. We're giving you the opportunities to come in and to learn and to show us what you know. And basically what we did here was, in addition to kind of a PLR or an RPL stream, working with employees to identify, okay, what do you need to know? What are the skills and abilities and attitudes that you need to have to run this machine? Recording that, we also began right off the bat with essential skills training. So just brief analysis. You could tell, because there was a computer tacked to each machine, that everybody had to have a certain level of digital technology. They had to be able to input data into the computer. And in addition to that, when we talked about return on expectation, that was one of the first things that the employer said was, we have this beautiful manufacturer resource planning system, and folks aren't using it. They're not inputting the data. And we can't tell how long it takes to run this process because it's so variable, so our data's off. We can't make decisions on it. So we begun with essential skills training initiatives in digital technology as well as document use, because those were the two key areas. And we also began communication. They were looking at implementing and actually moving forward with some lean training, so to get folks used to the idea of empowerment and of just saying, hey, I got a great idea, we can probably make this go faster, starting to build those skills for them to be able to do that, to participate in the lean activities. Currently we've been running these two parallel, and what we've done there is we've actually started with a skills ticket. So it's kind of the idea of the passport, where folks can begin to record and input their learning into it. So any training they go to, it's put in their skills ticket. And for now, because we're running with so many training initiatives now, essential skills and technical, so they have experts coming from the United States who are coming in and providing them with training around how to use the machines. And all of this now is being recorded in their skills tickets. The impacts that we're trying or aiming to achieve there, or the expectations, are, there's several of them. They're looking at making improvements to their HR systems. They'd like to just be able to have training. They'd like to have someone come in and to say, okay, well, here's kind of what you can do. Here's how you run this machine. Here's how you pour the ink and mix it. They didn't have that before. They're also looking at having in-house capability to provide training. So we're working with them to, what's the framework? What's the delivery method? How is it on-the-job training? Do you have trainers? So, in addition to, some of those essential skills, we're consulting with them around building a workplace training program. And again, boiling down to, some of their productivity with the waste, they weren't able to track it because people weren't inputting things into the computer. So we're working with them on various types of impacts, and the impacts that we've seen so far is that with all the different programs that we've been running, I think we've been there since January, there's been a measurable increase in the amount of attendance. So folks are starting to say, yeah, it's those WEM guys. I'm going to go to that. I'm going to check it out. So, they're coming and they're starting to open up to the idea of learning, which is fantastic. It's a really exciting project. We've designed 5 essential skills training programs, and the idea is that as we design them, we're designing them in a way that the workplace could then take them on in-house. And that they're tracked. So any assessments that we create, we're kind of keeping all that data in a competency matrix so that we can say, okay, well, you'd like to do an assessment for new hires coming in to see, okay, what training do they need? What do they already know? Here's how we could help you design that and make that. And we've done some cool initiatives there because they're, in some ways, they're using a lot of innovative ways to capture what's been going on during the day. So, for example, they use blogs. So daily, they're blogging all their, every supervisor, and now they're hoping the employees will go on and blog what happened during the day, safety issues, anything else. Okay, well, before we go and do that, what about the essential skills required? Can folks write in there? Can they even use a blog and navigate through the page? So, we're stepping back and we're getting them to think about it before implementing a huge change, and then we're supporting them in that. And what we've seen is that just that process, we're educating the organization as well around, here's how it works. You can recognize what people know by doing this before you make a big change. Here, think about this first. You might need to provide some knowledge and some opportunity for them to build their skills before you implement it. So there's been so much progress there. It's been really, really great. I had mentioned this already. The tickets, we had initially thought, okay, well, we'll leave this as an essential skills, but then we were saying, oh wow, they're actually filling out their technical training in here. This is great. They're using it, they're adopting it, and they're liking it. And now employees they're comfortable with the idea of workplace training, or more comfortable, I should say, because we're not quite there yet, but we're going to keep working at it. We've also completed the job profiles. So that being said, again, we're looking at compiling all that data and seeing, okay, what kind of essential skills training initiatives and other initiatives could we begin building here for you? And, initiatives in addition to training assessments as well. Was there another, I think? Oh, here we go. So we're creating and delivering assessments and training. We're going to continue rolling with that at this organization. And the idea is that once we have a bigger picture of what's required for each of the roles, that we would begin to do like a pre-populated sort of ticket. So here is the knowledge and the skills that's required. Here's your ticket. And what we would do right now is, because we kind of built an open ticket and they've just been jotting down all this training that they've been taking, we can cross-reference that. We could recognize what they've shown that they know already and move forward with the populated tickets. And the organization, when I told them the concept, they absolutely love this idea, because they kind of said, oh, so you're telling me that if we build an assessment and we deliver that assessment up front, if folks know how to use the SOPs, we don't have to run them through a 2-hour training program. And I said, well, No, you don't. They can go back on the floor and continue working. And when you're thinking dollar signs of someone sitting in a classroom for 2 hours, they loved the idea. So we're going to continue to roll on with creating those pre-populated tickets, and then seeing again how we can implement some of what we've done into their HR systems just to help make them more efficient and more effective. So any questions about that project?
With the skills tickets, and they're filling them out, and the whole skills passport idea, is the employer now looking at a sort of a skills inventory or a database of skills within the organization itself?
And yeah, that's what we've created, kind of a sort of competency matrix with all the skills and knowledge pieces that are required, just so that we can look at it and say, okay, well, how do we build assessments off of this and training off of this?
But more so with that, I mean, just the idea of being able to promote from within, that we know that these employees have these skills, or that employee has, the certain skills that we're looking for, because we know that down the road this position is going to become available. Oh. Are they doing that as well?
That's in the plans, and actually with this organization we're working toward integrating some of this into a learning management system so that they can track it both ways. So we've started them on that process. So there's the folks on the floor who have their ticket and their skills, but we've also built for them, okay, here's your list of employees, here's what they've completed thus far. So essentially a supervisor could look at the picture and say, okay, Megan's done, oh yeah, we could put her on that machine, or she's on the journey to becoming a press operator.
So connected with that then, when you're on a skills ticket, they've identified the training that they've taken. Is there some place in there, like an apprenticeship logbook or something, where the supervisor or somebody would sign off that they've actually achieved that, not that they've just taken the training, so that it could be used for RPL and portfolios later?
Yeah, and that's kind of, right now we're not quite there because we're just in the training. So we're also helping them define what training looks like. So when you take these modules of training, is there an on-the-job element, and what does that look like for you, and how do we manage that as well? Like, do you have trainers to do that and to watch that? Who is going to manage that? Where does that sit?
So to validate what they've learned.
Yeah. And everything's in SOPs, right? So we're working with them to develop an SOP to say, this is training at this organization. If you're going to be a press operator, you need to have it'll be in your ticket.
Is the skills ticket a paper ticket, or is it electronic that they continue to fill out? And then my other question is, who sees what they put on? Is that their personal one if it's electronic, or does the company see it?
The skills ticket is, for now, we have paper.
Okay.
Because we're not quite at the place where we could go to electronic. However, for the employees. But as we do the training and they complete the assessments, the sign-in sheets come in, and the kind of the matrix that sits at HR with all the employee names is being completed. So the ticket is more for the individual, but in a roundabout way, the information is coming up to HR to track and manage that. Questions? Okay, thank you.
What Megan describes there about companies, when you go in and basically there's little or nothing there, is pretty much what we face in the majority of cases. So we're building a system and a culture, and we're training, and we're trying to impact all levels of the organization, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These can be complicated and multi-year kinds of things. And one of the key questions in determining what do you do first, what do you do next, is what will their system bear at this moment in time? So it's the play within the play. It's change management at the same time. You know, they're very interesting projects. So back we are to the Labour Market Skills Division and their integrated responses. We have increasing pressures related to northern Manitoba, not the least of which is the rapid emergence of the mining sector. Re-emergence. The mining sector is volatile. It's up and down, up and down, up and down. The prediction over the next 5 years is good and bad. Good in the respect that they're going to need thousands of new workers. Bad in the respect that there are not thousands of new workers in the north. And so the credo amongst northerners is, or their vision is, northern jobs for northern people. So as the government supporting all of this, we have a lot of work to do in bringing populations who are considered to be furthest from employment to successful retention in jobs. And it's a very, as much as you're bringing a workplace from sort of nothing, you're bringing people from communities perhaps with little or no work experience training. They could be remote, rural, and you're taking them and their families and suddenly plopping them into a large mining company, if you will. So there's a multitude of things that must go on along the way. Some of the success that we're having is by sitting it on a foundation of essential skills and recognition of prior learning. So what we do with these populations is the assessment methods, and we have an assessment coordinator at Workplace Education Manitoba, and portfolio is one of her assessment tools. The successful approach that we have used in the north is we have developed, and by the way, I came up with this concept, which WEM has taken and run with it, because my First Nations partners keep telling me when people come in and just test people, there's an unfair thing going on there, a bias, because first off, we're not used to tests. And it's not that we don't know, it's the test situation. And I thought, well, it's not helping us if we don't know what they know. So how can we get at this in a different way? So we developed a portfolio methodology which expands and contracts depending, again, what the scenario will bear and what we can push forward. So you have to understand in the work that we do, both with employers as well as these complex northern situations, there's the ideal solution, and then there's where you can start and what you can actually do, always keeping the ideal in mind. But, it's kind of like you can't go in with the all or nothing ideal because nothing will happen. But if you can start, as Megan has so aptly described in her projects, okay, what could they accept at this moment? And you can see how it grows and grows and grows. We use the same mindset with our northern partners, the same mindset exactly. What can we actually do to begin to build relationship? And it's all about building relationships. And from there, we keep moving towards the ideal, if you will. And sometimes we get it at the first flush, but sometimes we don't. The assessment toolkit has portfolio as one of the main things. What we do on the portfolio side is we usually have anywhere from 1 full day to 5 full days in one chunk. Okay? Now, during that time, we also need to be determining a whole bunch of stuff. How ready are they for whatever it is? Now, sometimes it's pre-employment training that we know that is going to happen. Sometimes we have an employer that has employment possibilities. There's jobs, real jobs and good paying jobs. This is a high stakes game. And we don't want any false starts here with these opportunities by going in with the test. Here, take this gate test, right? Okay, they all fail that, they're not ready. I would beg to differ. Okay, so we have made the case slowly, steadily, but surely that there's a different way to get this information about what people know and can do. And everyone in this room already knows this stuff, but most people don't know this stuff. So what we do is, as I said, we contract or expand the possibility of portfolio building depending on what the moment will bear. We weave within that portfolio building the test, whatever it is. So if we're trying to determine if people have adequate essential skills levels to be accepted as a hydro employee for electrical line technician, we know what essential skills they will need as a new employee to go into their SATO training, their electrical training. We know what that is. So we take it and we splice it into the portfolio build. And quite often what we will also do is on the front end, we begin with a bit of refresher training, okay? So we might do some math stuff. So if somebody asked me in this moment to convert a decimal to a fraction, I'd be like, "Ugh." But if you said to me, look, remember this? And you showed me and then said, here, try this. I go, oh yeah, I got that. Because I have the original learning. It's been forced to a recess in my brain. So this refresher training will not provide a false skills gain for somebody who doesn't have the learning to begin with. All it does is pull it out of that dark recess in the brain where people go, oh yes. So it factors out that I've just forgotten bit from the I can do this bit, okay? So we will do that before we begin the process. If we're in a scenario where our portfolio build is just one day and we are fully aware of, let's use hydro again, electrical line tech. It's a trades-like thing. We do a mini portfolio build with trades competencies as the benchmark. So they're building their evidence and their knowledge and skills in this document against this quasi-benchmark, if you will. So it's not, sort of put everything that you know and can do into the portfolio with all your evidence, because we don't have time for that. So we called it a mini build, and it's coupled with this essential skills things. So, we might get 2 days out of them. So what happens is on day one, they do their refresher training. They start their facilitated assessment. And we call them facilitated assessment because if someone is crashing and burning in front of us, they're pulled right away and counseled immediately. And they're shown all of the assets that they have put on paper, and they are set excellent place to start. Not, guess what, you got 10 wrong. We don't do that, or your score is. We say, look at your assets. And they're given their first piece for their portfolio. Here are your assets in math. And they get their own learner feedback thing. And then on we go to day two. And these people are invited back for the mini portfolio build on day two. which also has something as a culmination of this portfolio build called the critical conversation. So we have their assets on essential skills. We've got their targeted or mini portfolio build. We're working against perhaps the requirement to go to hydro, let's say. Let's pick on hydro today, a hydro entry for electrical line tech. And at the end of the 2 days, we have Rachel, who's come because she's looking for opportunity. We find out she has no prior skills or knowledge that would even remotely relate to an electrical line technician. She may be the single mother of 4 children. She may actually have a goal which has not been identified, an employment goal like, I want to start a business and be the upholsterer in the community because we don't have one. Yet here she is, and on a normal path, what would happen is she'd take the test and she would fail, and she'd be gone. Sorry, you fail to even qualify for the right to apply for this job. Bye-bye. What we do then is we say, we have a critical conversation. Rachel, do you really want to go to hydro? Oh, yes, I really do. Well, then here's the steps along the way to your goal. You need to go back to, let's say, school is their option in the community, and you need to get these courses, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and there'll be a critical conversation, and she will come out with a learning plan. In the case of somebody who is closer to that or ready to go and might have a small gap, we will say, you need to go to your teacher on reserve here. It depends, whatever the reserve is, we'll make the referral to the appropriate service provider, or we will come back and provide the instruction. And here is the, here are your steps or your learning goals along the way needed to get to where you want to be, which is a hydro line tech. The other thing that has happened is, in many cases, we have discovered that there are individuals there who are actually ready to go, and nobody knew that. They have all of the learning, they have the skills, the knowledge. They actually have evidence of other employment scenarios that are highly related to this, let's say construction. And we are able to accumulate that and show it to hydro and go, look, here's 3 guys here that might not have passed the test for the very reasons the First Nations partners are telling us. The test scenario is a barrier to success. However, through this process, we've got all of this evidence to show you. And this has happened. This has happened, okay? One of the things I didn't mention is that the Labour Market Skills Division has recently inherited employment income assistance from Family Services. That was about a month ago. So we are taking on the population that currently sits within Family Services that has been identified on a trajectory towards employment. In old terms, you would call this the welfare to work transition population. Okay, so we had partnered with Family Services in the past, meaning the Labour Market Skills Division, to assist with a small population of these people. And Workplace Education Manitoba was invited in to provide some assistance. We went in with this methodology. Number 1, it combined essential skills assessment within portfolio, and number 2, training response. We argued for and made the case that they should all be given 1 week in a portfolio build, and we won. And everyone said, well, you know, we'll let you try this, but be warned, you will come out at the end of 5 days with 15% or less of that population still sitting in the room. Guess what? We came out with over 95% still sitting in the room after 5 days over a delivery of about 14 cohorts. Again and again and again, different people every time, they stayed because they were building confidence. Now, they didn't even know they were having essential skills tests, but Friday afternoon their critical conversations would come where each of them was referred over with a different goal. It could be employment, it could be training. They were benchmarked against the skills required for that goal. So if somebody said, I want to get my mature student diploma, then we would benchmark their essential skills against where they are in that request. Are they well below it and really should be in a literacy program first? Are they pretty well skilled? And we would refer to an adult learning center that was working with us, and we would refer over and say, you know what, it's looking like a grade 12 here. If it was an employment goal, are they ready for work now? Or should they be put into our 12-week Introduction to Industry course, which is a combination of employability skills and essential skills? Should they go through that as an acclimatization period? And so this is what we delivered. This is probably going to be rolled out in a larger way across this massive population that we now have responsibility for. It's all in the planning. It is the same approach that we use in the North. So it's taking those who you would define in governmentese, and I'll accredit the federal government with this term, those who are furthest from employment, such a handy phrase, and moving them through a series of successful steps. Always building on assets, always building confidence. By the way, we had a number of people who directly left that 1 week and went successfully into employment. We have been surveying that population 6 months later and 1 year later. And now, mind you, this is not the type of, it was a learning experience for all of us. Lots of them you can't find. They couch surf, which means they don't have a home. They may have 6 phone numbers or 12 in this time, and if you happen to find them, good. We were able to find between 50 and 60% of them a year later. And of the 50 to 60%, 60 to 70% remain either employed full or part-time or in school. This is jaw-dropping, astonishing. So we know we're onto something. Quite what? Not quite sure. But we know that we're onto something. Even Family Services is going, what? The success, particularly in Winnipeg with these populations, is very, very dismal so far. Personally, I feel it's the 1 week portfolio build, and we continue to add to their portfolio in the Introduction to Industry. So they build while they're also in class. Okay? Now, I am very clearly out of time, but just to mention very quickly and allow you to ask me a few questions, and those who need to leave, don't feel shy about just walking out. Okay? This presentation, by the way, will be made available, I understand, to you electronically afterwards. Again, in the North, we talk about the overall needs. So it's workplace, pre-employment, and circling around. So once you're employed, I mean, this is a truism. You may have to go into training again for other kinds of opportunities, even within the same employer, but they're circling around there. And that's what all of us do, no matter how successful we are, okay? So there's a number of predictors and outcomes and things that we attend to for those circling around. When we're talking about community members, there's a different set. You have to take families into consideration. Where is the community? What is the history? And all of these kinds of things in successfully linking people to employment. This model here, it's called the Training to Employment Pathways model. It was derived by surveying employers in the North and getting their competency list for entry level. The employers, through the Northern Manitoba Sector Council, agreed on a commonly held set of competencies that would do for them at entry level. Their vision at the time was to create the Northern Skills Passport. So somebody who has come through training and is signed off as having these competencies, they would regard that as a proxy for having the entry-level skills to work in a collection of the workplaces in the North in mining, forestry, and hydro. Okay? So what we said, and this is ratified by industry, is there is a progression here. The first part of it is assessing, and assessing properly in the manner I've described. The next piece is having the basic literacy skills to be able then to enter into pre-employment or other kinds of more advanced education and training. Then it's about having the essential skills to be successful in a workplace. Intro to Industry is a standardized course that has been ratified by the employers, which yields the competencies for entry level in unskilled positions. The next one up, pre-industry, becomes much more focused. For example, we have a pre-hydro course. Coming out of that, you would be considered to be semi-skilled and would qualify to go to hydro's recruitment gate, okay? What we have found recently, though, is hydro's starting to snap up the people coming out of intro to industry because they like them so much, because they have the employability skills or the attitudes and the ability to stick with the job and learn continuously. And in the pre-trades company or sector piece, that's pretty focused. So we could run pre-carpentry, pre-electrician, pre-hydro, pre-HUD Bay, pre-forestry. And then all the material they're encountering in those courses is very pointed, okay? You're going to look at material that they use in the mining industry, not just generic stuff we pull down off the net, but everything that you see will be about mining, okay? And the final piece is the employment piece, and this is where things get granular. Megan described it quite well. We can go in and watch you do a process and define exactly what skill at what level you require. It's not required up at pre-industry. You don't need that kind of definition because you don't know where they're going, okay? But in the workplace, you need that definition. It's very, very specific, okay? So anyhow, number of specific projects that we're doing. The major one, connecting Aboriginals to manufacturing, which the federal government, HRSDC, whom I love, afforded me the funding to try a model which has never been tried internationally. A holistic model, gate to gate, right from the community into successful long-term retention in the workplace with all of the family supports, all of the learner supports, all of the mentorship for transition, all of the mentorship in the workplace, all of that in one big happy model. And it's working. We're still early days, we're still in the first pilot, We're partnering actually with the University of Winnipeg and Winnipeg Technical College for the training, and with all of the other pieces attached to it. So it's a very complex, large project. The other thing that I argued for was a different type of evaluation methodology, not just project evaluation, but rather a different kind of social impact evaluation where you go in and you engage the community to get their perspective on how things went, which is outside of what normally is done in these kinds of projects. We're running a dual evaluation track on this, which they allowed me to do, and I'm thrilled about. So I'm going to stop. There's lots more I could tell you, and I know, for example, Dawn has talked about our e-portfolio course. WPLAR, by the way, the Workplace Prior Learning Assessment and Recognition Committee, in part funds what Megan is doing in partnership with WEM. WPLAR is back at New Flyer. New Flyer is revitalizing and turning electronic, the skills passport, etc. That's a really big, happy project, certainly for me, to see them evolving with it. You know, that's a nice idea. It evolves, right? WPLAR is also doing a research project on the moment on the concept of e-recruiting. How can employers recruit electronically, and what is their acceptance of portfolio and the e-portfolio that Phyllis and Dawn work on within that concept? Okay, and what are the scales of what that they will accept, etc. So that work will continue into the new fiscal year, so I don't have anything to tell you at the moment. They're midway through it. Anyhow, enough from me. Questions? And I'm sorry for running over time. Questions? Gail?
I'll try and make it quick, but
Yep.
a question back to the essential skills.
Mm-hmm.
And with how much you've seen from the connection of document use and digital technology, because a lot of stuff now, instead of print manuals, is online manuals.
Yep.
So does that change the way you look at document use?
Absolutely. Navigating documents online is a different thinking skill than navigating a paper document.
I still haven't achieved it, so.
This is the thing. This is the interesting thing. Are any of us really that good at it? But can we develop a process that it would at least give us something to hang on to? You know, first you do this, next you do this, next you do this. Because right now it's just like, well, let's try this, you know. So with document navigation, be it paper or online, can you develop a process that can be taught to people that would make it more systematic? Yeah. Other questions? Okay, I'll be around for a few minutes afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.